Anyway, to steer back, right, to get off of that bunny trail, right? Steve, for building tall, building wide, do you have an opinion? Do you feel that maybe Genshin or Star Rail rewards one of these play styles over the other, or does one of those games prioritize something over the other?
So, at least in my mind, I think both games are collection building wide friendly. That because the difficulty level is tuned for a more casual audience, there's no PvP in it, there's not the race to claim the tower or max out the tower or what have you. In general, I would say it's much more collection friendly. It's not as collection friendly as some other games that again we might discuss or might not, but in general, I would say that they are collection friendly. I do think that as far as building tall goes, I can see the value, but I'm really left going, over time, I think Genshin has gotten to a point to where it's pushed more towards that direction just because power creep being what it is, the expectation has become much more that, oh, you're really looking at like C2 versions of characters a lot. You're looking at characters with their signature weapons a lot just because over time you're able to pick up those tools. Having a C1, R1 Hu Tao, so a Hu Tao that's gotten a second copy of her and her signature weapon, which I guess I should clarify what those those abbreviations I'm using.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
for those that are unfamiliar, yeah, when we talk about constellations in Genshin or etalons in Star Rail, that is essentially when you get a duplicate of a character, it unlocks a passive ability that makes them stronger or makes their abilities level up a little bit more. And then when we say E6, that would be like a constellation 6, which means you've gotten six duplicates after the original, and that would be the max. And then for your weapons or your light cones, when we talk about S1 or S4, those would be the superimposed 1 or 4. So you've had the original weapon and then 2 or 3 copies to get to whatever level for superimposition. So
Yeah, and
quick
R
quick
is
definitions there.
yeah, and R refers to refinement, which is just the Genshin version of superimposed. So
Yes.
when we're throwing it out around CX, that's just what we're referring to. Regardless, if you're seeing a Hu Tao who you've got an additional copy of her and you've gotten her signature weapon, that's a character that, from a power budget point of view, when she first came out, would have been very powerful, but now is much more, for lack of a better term, mid. Much more, she's good. Arlecchino's better. It's just the way it is. Yeah, I'm thinking that at least in that aspect, over time, building tall has paid off if you have specific characters that you do want to keep. But I don't think that in any way you're forced to build tall in the way that other games can have systems that kind of push you that direction. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I agree with the last bit you said that it's Star Rail both don't force you to have to build tall. It is very much from a collector's standpoint, and I think they would want you to try and collect more, not only to incentivize you to spend, of course, but also because they put a lot of effort into making each character distinctly unique, both in, I think, playstyle, their aesthetic, their appearance, right? And then also their personality and bringing to really bring the character to life. I think they incentivize to collect in that regards. As far as between Genshin Impact and between Honkai Star Rail, I would say that probably would incentivize building taller more than Star Rail would. Not to say that there's a vast ocean between the two in terms of it, but if I had to give an edge one way or the other, I would probably say Genshin to build taller just because a lot of things are based the quote unquote end game in Genshin being the Spiral Abyss. It's a time trial,
Mm-hmm.
and me do big numbers equal thing die faster equal faster finish time, right? Equals more stars in Spiral Abyss, more Primo Gems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is the whole point. In Star Rail, you have your MOC and things of that nature, which are finish thing within certain amount of turn cycles. But yes, you can make the argument that do more damage, hit faster, kill things faster, finish in sooner cycles, get your 3 stars that way, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But it's but I feel like the investment to get that turn cycle down isn't necessarily based off of the power of the character per se. Obviously, it is, but I think one of the big factors that doesn't exist in Genshin that exists in Star Rail is the speed stat.
Mhm.
And I think because speed isn't something that is a stat that increases based off of Eidolon or constellations, right? Whatever terminology you want to use, it is purely a stat that is on your artifact set. That's not incentivizing the building deep aspect, because the idea is you want to get more turns in a cycle, and the more turns you get in a cycle, also the more damage you can do. That's why there's speed thresholds when you're building characters, and we talk about making sure you want to hit that 131 speed cycle or that 158 or whatever the speed marker is. Where speed's not a statistic in Genshin. It's literally attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage, elemental mastery, elemental recharge. Those are the things. Whereas Genshin, you have attack, you have crit rate, you have crit damage, you have break effect, you have not effect resistance, but effect status effect itself, and then you have speed. Speed doesn't equate to bigger numbers, but it occurs to doing numbers more often. But again, those are from your artifacts; they're not from the actual character etalons or the character duplicates. Whereas in Genshin, bigger numbers do directly correlate from having duplicates of a character.
That's actually a good
So
point. I hadn't really thought about that.
just yes, just a long-winded way of saying that, and hopefully I didn't lose too many people in the sauce on that. But that's what how I would view that. Anything else that you have, Steve, on building tall, building wide? Any closing thoughts that you have in that regards?
Yeah, I guess my closing thoughts are obviously this discussion was very Genshin Mihoyo or Hoyoverse focused. There are games out there. Echo Apocalypse, I believe, was one game that really pushed you to build tall versus Nikke, which I feel is very collector friendly, especially with the synchro device. Other games out there will have their own meta, their own direction that they'll push players to go. But in general, I feel like the Hoyoverse games allow for that expression in account building that you can choose to go wide and have lots of different options if that's something you want, or you can choose to focus in on what you enjoy and really hone in on those. So in that case, I would give the Hoyoverse team a two big thumbs up for succeeding in allowing that sort of player expression. But your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I agree. I think Hoyoverse does a good job in allowing you to do either. If you want to be that casual player that just collects them all and is, the Pokemon trainer, right? They allow for that, right? So you can build all those different teams and experiment with different play styles. But if you can make the game as hardcore as you want to make it in terms of min-maxing and going deep into a team and investing in that. And yeah, you mentioned Echo Opolyps that literally has skills hidden behind duplicates. That obviously is forcing you, especially if you're a free to play player, to invest a lot of your premium currency into a handful of characters, not necessarily being able to collect. And even more so because games like that have a PvP mode. And so when you factor that in, having characters that you have to go deep in on does limit your ability to go wide with the account, especially if you're trying to get anywhere decent with a PvP ranking. Other games have been notorious for having huge power gaps between a base level unit and others. And for sometimes it's almost like it's a full-time job to try and grind the gear that you need or grind the primo gems or whatever that you need in order to have the availability to pull for those things. And then yeah, you have other games again like Hoyoverse and whatnot where the character is the character and there's small power spikes in duplicates, but it allows you to play either way. So yeah, so two thumbs up. But moving forward, still keeping it in the Hoyo realm, I did want to talk about because we had this week with the 2.2 release, the release of Robin. And we mentioned it earlier. You pulled for, lost the initial 50-50, but got her after that. But let's talk into your experience with Robin and our thoughts, how we see her fitting into the meta, teams we can build around it, and go from there. So let's dive into that now.